All right, so Andrew Yang decided to go on Twitter yesterday and basically just obliterate any credibility that he had left with progressives. And I'm going to show you the tweet that he put out. But first, let me just preface it by saying this. I was never really a big fan of Andrew Yang. I liked his UBI proposal when I thought that it was just a straight up UBI proposal with no strings attached. Turns out what he's proposing to do in New York as he's running to be the mayor is it's basically just a Trojan horse to undercut the social safety net. And in addition to that, recently in the last couple of days, he came out with a statement saying he thinks the NYPD, which already has a budget larger than most militaries around the world, needs more funding in order to solve the problem of crime in New York City. And then he came out with this. And if you didn't have a final straw, here it is. I'm standing with the people of Israel who are coming under bombardment attacks and condemn the Hamas terrorists. The people of New York City will always stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel who face down terrorism and persevere. So nowhere in this tweet or in his statements does he mention the fact that several hours before he put out this tweet, that Palestinian health officials in the Gaza Strip say 20 people, including 9 children, were killed by Israel. I hate how they phrase this in fighting with Israel as if the children were fighting with Israel, but 9 children were killed in strikes that were launched from Israel. Innocent people, innocent children killed, and he gives a complete blanketed defense of Israel. No condemnation of those killings, no support for Palestinian people who are merely trying to defend themselves from being displaced from their homes and violently attacked by security forces. This is just disgusting. And listen, I made a video yesterday that was diving into the details of what's happening in East Jerusalem and the context behind that. And the rest of the international community, at least, or a lot of these organizations at least, seem to understand the situation very well. Israel is an apartheid state. Okay, they're committing widespread human rights abuses of Palestinians, many of which could be classified as war crimes. And he puts out a statement that doesn't even mention any of that. He puts out a statement that puts all of the blame in this entire situation on the Palestinian people, even though they're the ones who are being displaced from their homes. They're the ones who just had the third holiest site in Islam attacked and almost set on fire the other night. They were setting off tear gas and stun grenades as people were trying to peacefully pray in the third holiest site in all of Islam. And this man says nothing about it. Says nothing about it. As if the Palestinian people don't exist. So, I mean, listen, I can't describe it in a better way than just to show you who agrees with them. Okay? So we got Ted Cruz saying bravo to Yang for opposing the rabidly pro-Hamas and anti-Israel attacks from fellow Dems Omar and Tlaib. So first of all, let me give some credit to Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, because it does take a lot of it takes a lot of stones to come out there, stick your neck out, and speak out for these people in the way that they have been doing. So I give them credit for the way that they have been coming out and advocating on behalf of the Palestinian people and calling for even specific policy goals like conditioning aid to Israel on halting the illegal settlements and ending the human rights abuses. So I give credit to Ilhan Omar for standing up to shit like this, and as well as Rashida Tlaib. But this is who's agreeing with Andrew Yang. Ted Cruz. We also got Meghan McCain here. Hashtag Yang Gang. And even worse than all of those other ones combined, Stephen fucking Miller. Stephen fucking Miller agrees with Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is exactly right. Ilhan Omar is outrageously wrong. Listen, when Stephen Miller agrees with you on anything, it's time to get out of politics. It's time to get out of politics. Stephen Miller is maybe the single most reprehensible person in the country. He is as close as you can get to defining a Nazi in this country without him wearing a swastika on his arm. So this is who's agreeing with Andrew Yang on this take. It tells you everything you need to know. And listen, he got absolutely obliterated in the comments. If you go and see everyone on the left, he united the left as the serfs pointed out. Andrew Yang finally united the left around all of us despising this take from him. You got John, you got Shoe on Head, you got Vosh, you got Ryan Knight, you got Mike from the Humanist Report. Everybody, Aaron Mate, all these people coming out against this take because it's a shitty take. All right, it's a shitty take. You cannot be in this conversation and not recognize the humanity of the Palestinian people, okay? Nobody likes violence. Nobody condones or supports violence from any side. But you can't do a false equivalency here. let alone come out purely on the side of Israel. Because the power dynamic that we're talking about right here, Israel basically has the military equipment that the United States has. Okay, we funnel them military equipment, we funnel them funds, we give them billions of dollars in aid per year. And so they basically have the military equipment and might of the United States. And the Palestinian people have nothing close to that, nothing even remotely close to that. And yet, this whole conversation is talked about by people like Andrew Yang, or by even the media typically, as if it's like two sides that are equally equipped coming to clash together. So they don't talk about the imbalance in the power dynamic there. I mean, Israel is a nuclear power with US military grade equipment. Palestinians don't have that shit. It's not an even fight. And on top of that, he doesn't recognize that Israel is the aggressor. Okay, Israel is the aggressor in these circumstances, not just the aggressor in the immediate violence that they're conducting, like, for example, attacking the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as they did the other day. Not just in direct attacks of violence are they the instigators, but they're also the instigators because they're fucking trying to kick Palestinians out of their homes. They're instigating this on every level. And I think it's important to draw comparisons to what we have going on here in the United States, because the overlap between what's happening in Israel with Palestinians and what's happening here in the United States with like the Black Lives Matter movement, there is significant overlap. And this is the same arguments that I make in defense of riots, or that I make in defense of protests that end up turning somewhat violent, you could say, or where there's property damage. And the arguments that I make are basically along the lines of what Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said, a riot is the language of the unheard, right? And so if a riot is the language of the unheard, then you have to address the underlying conditions that lead to that violence, that lead to people feeling the need, like they need to fight back in order to defend their communities. And so maybe sometimes that bridges into violence, but you can't say that black people in the United States don't have a right to defend their communities. You can't say that Palestinian people in Gaza or Palestinian people in the West Bank don't have the right to defend themselves, because they do. And they're the ones who the majority of the violence is being inflicted upon. And so this take from Andrew Yang is shitty on all levels. And I guess I'll leave you with this. He's not the best candidate in the race for New York City. So if you live in New York, City and you're going to be voting for mayor, support Dianne Morales, because she's 1,000 times better than Andrew Yang. She supports Palestinian rights, and she would never have stupid takes like this. So listen, we got progressives in this race that are better than Andrew Yang. It seems like he's slipping in the polling, and I would imagine this take from him and coming out with the stance that he has is only going to hurt him further. So if we can elevate somebody like Dianne Morales and support her in any way that you possibly can, then I think that's a good thing that we should be doing right now, because Andrew Yang, this just isn't it.